Hello and welcome, my name is Hops, and today I want to show you a leveling guide for Wrath the Lich King, mostly Warmane, because that's the most popular private server at the moment, and I want to base it on 3 pillars to improve your leveling for Wrath the Lich King. So the 3 pillars we have here are talents, money, and items. Really simple. Let's start with talents. Now, some quick tips. Don't be a hybrid. So what is a hybrid? Hybrids are characters that put talent points in different talent trees. So for example, a mage that puts 5 points into fire, then 3 points into frost, then 2 points back into fire, then 5 points into arcane. Don't do that. The further you go down the tree, generally the stronger it gets. So focus all of your talent points on one tree. Now also you want to use your talent point immediately when you get them. So when you level up, put your talent point in. It is worth it. I see so many players running around with unused talent points, which is a shame because their character is just weaker now. Just keep your character as strong as possible. Now, if you have no idea what you're doing, look at PvE guides on the internet. This is gonna just help you get an idea what talents are generally good, what talents are generally bad, what you should avoid, what you should pick up. But they're not gonna tell you exact things, and maybe they are not showing you specific talents that are really good for leveling. So I recommend you just ask questions in the comments of this video, or even better, join the Twitch stream on twitch.tv/hopsr1. There you can ask your questions in the chat, and I will answer them thoroughly. So next up, we want to talk about the recommended talent trees specializations to put your points into. Now these are for solo leveling. So if you want to go out into the world and level solo, this is what you want to do. So warrior, all 3 are good. You can play any of them. I recommend arms the most though. For rogue, combat is the only real choice because the others limit your weapon progression because they require dagger usage, and they also require a lot more positioning, crowd control, etc. So combat is just a lot simpler, a lot more straightforward, and a lot stronger in general for solo leveling. For paladin, we take the only DPS tree, that is retribution. For hunter, beast mastery is the strongest for solo leveling. It gives you a lot of utility and a lot of survivability while still keeping up high damage. Druid, you go feral because the other option would be balance, and balance has a lot of mana problems because it's a caster spec, and feral uses energy or rage, which is a lot more efficient. So generally you should go feral if you want to level efficiently as a druid. Shaman should go enhancement for the same reasoning. Elemental is just really mana expensive, and with bad gear that won't work. For warlock, demonology is the best. Once you get into a higher level, affliction is extremely good, but demonology is good through the whole way. If you're soul leveling, again, just for soul leveling. For mage, choose frost. Frost is the safest option. Fire is really good. It does a lot more damage than frost, but it is really hard to play a good fire mage, especially when you're solo. So I recommend frost, and if you feel a lot safer, you can pick up fire. Now priests, they only have 1 DPS spec, so they should choose shadow. Shadow is extremely good once you get to level 40 with your shadow form. Yeah. So remember that all specs, almost all specs, are good for group content. So if you want to play dungeons with a friend or with many friends, it's a really good idea It's still a good idea to stick to those things if you're DPSing, but you can play healing roles, you can play tanking roles, you can do whatever you want. The only 3 specs I wouldn't recommend for group and solo content are Subtlety Rogue, because it's a PvP spec and it isn't really that strong compared to combat and assassination. Survival Hunter just lacks the pure damage of marksmanship and BM. And Arcane Mage, because it's just inferior to Fire for damage and to Frost for survivability. Arcane is kind of a weird spec, which I do not recommend you choosing when you're starting off with the game. Now that is the first section. So quick recap: spend talent points, spend them intelligently in one tree, and avoid these specs and choose the good damage specs that I have shown before. If you have questions where to put your talents, just ask in the stream or in the comment section. So for money, generally in Warmane we see tons of players in Stormwind and Ironforge or Orgrimmar running around and begging for money. Now why is that? Well, because they have no idea how to manage their money. I usually give them some, but this is gonna help you long term. That 1 gold won't help you long term, but this will. So let's start off. You want to save money with some specific things. Let's talk about saving money. Now, first of all, really big, don't buy bad spells. Bad spells are just, what I mean with that is just useless spells in general. Like, for example, underwater breathing for warlocks is really useless most of the time, but it costs the same amount of gold as Shadow Bolt, which is the main ability that you're gonna use for dealing damage. So don't buy these spells. These spells are really useless. Just think, what spells do I use often? What spells do I need? What spells do I need to rank up? So don't buy bad spells. This is a huge money sink. Next up, don't buy gear. I say most of the time here because very simple. Melee classes, they benefit a lot from their weapon. Having a really good weapon is increasing your killing speed by a ton, and therefore your leveling speed. So if you're level 30 and your weapon is a level 15 green, you should, which is rarely gonna happen, but might happen, you definitely want to go to the auction house, check some prices for some good weapons with high damage, and if you can't find them for a cheap price, go to the vendor, buy a white weapon for your appropriate level. It will be worth it. But that is the only exception to this rule. Otherwise, don't buy gear. You're gonna replace it so quickly, especially if you queue for dungeons, which I do recommend. Definitely queue for dungeons at all times, unless it's really boring to you, then don't. So only buy 1 mount per tier. So there's a tier at level 20 for 60% speed mount, there's a tier level 40 for the 100% speed mounts, and there's a tier level 60 for the flying mounts. Now, you will always have options on what mounts to buy on these tiers. I recommend always just buying one, even if you want to have all of them. Keep your calm, buy one, keep leveling. On the next tier, also just buy one. On the next tier, just buy one. Once you're on a high level, the previous tier of mounts is going to be really inexpensive to you, and then you can buy them. Just keep your calm and just buy one for the moment, if you can't even afford 1 mount, which is why we're doing this. Now, another way of saving money is avoiding crafting professions. Crafting professions are a ton of fun, but some of them just are a huge gold sink, a huge gold waste. So you should generally avoid them. But I'm gonna show you a list of what professions I do recommend, even if they're crafting professions. Now, in terms of gaining money, because we need to gain money if you want to save it, you want to always buy bags, buy the best bags that you can, and pick up all of the stuff you can. All of the stuff that is a little expensive, 1 silver, 50 copper, pick it up, pick it up. Fill your bags at all times because you want to go back to town with full bags and sell everything to the vendor. Sell everything to the vendor. With buying bags, I'm not saying if you have a gold 80, you should immediately go to the bag vendor and buy a 10 slaughter. No. I'm saying that if you have 30 silver on level 8, you should buy 2 6-slot bags. That's what you should do. Always try to keep your bags up on a high level. Maybe check out the auction house for some sneak deals. Maybe some guilds provide you with bags. Maybe some awesome dude will give you a bag. Try to have as high quality bags as possible so you can pick up as much stuff, sell it to the vendor. Also, by picking up everything, you might pick up something that might be expensive on the auction house. So gems, recipes, etc. Or some named items. You definitely want to check the price on the auction house for that. Green BOE drops usually don't sell for a lot on the auction house, but blue BOE drops, they definitely do. So check out the price for that. It might just be 5 gold, but 5 gold is better than 1, right? Now, and also the best thing for getting money are gathering professions. So let's look at professions. Professions are a huge part of the money game. So the best ones are the gathering professions. Guys, start from the back. Skinning is the lazy man's gold farm. Skinning is gonna give you the least gold out of all of these professions, just because everybody is doing it. But it's just worth to skin every animal and just vendor their leather. There are some leathers like heavy leather and heavy hide that are really expensive on the auction house. Just yesterday I sold heavy hide for 14 gold and it's amazing. I just skinned one mob and made 14 gold. So skinning can make a ton of gold, especially when you get it up. Rugged leather is really expensive, and even before that you can make some decent cash. But if you're really lazy and you don't want to go out of your way to make money, pick up skinning. Herbalism is the next thing. Herbalism is not as strong as mining of a gathering profession, but there are some herbs that are extremely expensive, and those you can sell in the auction house, and you should choose a crafting profession to use the herbs that you do not sell in the auction house that are really inexpensive. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Mining is by far the best gold making method in the entire game. The first ore, just to explain, the first ore you mine in the game is copper. You can farm that as a level 5 character. Go to the mining trainer, pick up mining, pick up a pickaxe, go outside into the starting zone and farm copper ore. Look up a map on the internet and farm copper ore. Now that you might think is worth nothing, but copper ore, a stack of copper ore is 15 gold. If you have sold one stack of copper ore for 15 gold, even for 10 gold, if you sell for 10 gold, you're set until level 20 at least, maybe 25 if you're really good at saving money. Mining is king. It is sometimes really hard to level. Sometimes it is a bitch, but it is worth it. If you hit level 270, 280, something like that, you can mine thorium. Thorium, a stack of thorium bars sells for about 80 till 100 something gold. So it is really, really expensive. Easy gold, guys. Mining is easy gold, and I recommend it to every class, every player. Unless you're super lazy, then don't do it. Now, talking about good crafting professions, alchemy, I would choose if I would go herbalism. So if you really want to go herbalism, which I can somehow understand, because it's quite cool thing about it. You should go alchemy, using the herbs that are inexpensive on the auction house to make elixirs and potions. We're going to talk about that later. Elixirs and potions that are going to quicken and make your leveling experience more safe. It's just a really good way of spending these inexpensive herbs. So that's why I put it into good crafting professions. Tailoring is something you use if you're playing a class that is either cloth wearing, which is mage, priest, and warlock, or if you are playing a spec that wants spell power, intellect, and spirit, like elemental shaman, restoration druid, holy paladin, stuff like that. So everything that needs spell power likes to go tailoring. Tailoring mining, perfect. Tailoring skinning, perfect. Tailoring herbalism, you can also do that. Tailoring is pairable with everything because you do not need a profession to gather cloth because you just pick it up off of mobs. So there are also a ton of bad crafting professions, especially blacksmithing, jewel crafting. They gain you no gold. You can almost make no gold from these professions, and they're a huge gold sink. Sometimes it will cost 100 gold to just get 10 skill points in blacksmithing, and the higher blacksmithing rank you get, the more expensive it gets. So for level 300 blacksmithing, you might have put in multiple thousands of gold, if not tens of thousands. So it's not worth it. Enchanting is also just a huge gold sink. If you enchant, you need to disenchant items to get their essences and then use them to enchant other gear. Now that sounds really cool, but the leveling is really expensive. At some point, the greens and the blues that you need to disenchant are costing 1 gold 50, even more, and you need to disenchant them and get a useless essence that you don't even need. And it is a huge waste of gold, and you should only do enchanting if you have already a ton of gold. If you pair enchanting with mining, that is a possible option to kind of have a balance between spending gold and gaining gold. But enchanting is still a huge gold sink, so it would be better to just save the gold. Yeah. Enchanting in the late levels can make you a good coin. I'm not saying that is false, but in the early levels, mid levels, it's gonna cost you a ton of gold, and this is where most people struggle. And if you don't choose it with mining, impossible to keep up with gold. Leatherworking just sucks. You can take it with skinning if you want to, but generally just sucks. Inscription can make glyphs and scrolls. Glyphs you can buy with the auction house for really cheap once you need them, and scrolls are bad potions in my opinion. Also for enchanting, you can go enchanting tailoring, so you can build items out of cloth to disenchant them for essences to up your enchanting. The process makes sense, but again, the greens you craft with tailoring, they cost a lot to make, and they would sell for a lot, but you can't sell them because you just disenchant them. Enchanting, really expensive. Now, I would recommend going for one gathering profession, if not two. Mining can solo your run if you're keeping it up to your level. And yeah, just avoid the bad professions in my opinion. Now the items for leveling, here really basic shit. So gear is the items you wear. The weapon is really important for melee classes and hunters. As I said, all of their attacks, or most of their attacks, they scale of weapon damage. And there are a ton of consumables in the game, potions, which are on use, instant effect stuff. So health potions and mana potions. then there are elixirs, which are long-term buffs that alchemists can make, or you can buy off the auction house if you have the coin. They give you long-term buffs to stats or other effects, like you gain 5 health every 5 seconds, for example. That's Troll Blood Elixir. Scrolls you can buy off the auction house or loot, make with inscription. They just give stat buffs. And food and drinks, you can buy them off innkeepers and other merchants. You should always have a nice amount of food with you, just if you need it. Not too much, not too little. Just keep some in your bags. And in terms of drinks, you want drinks if you are a mana-based class, just to recover from a ton of mana loss, let's say from a big fight. And there are also item enhancements like spell power oils, mana oils, and sharpening stones. And in terms of stats, we're just gonna switch to the game real quick. So here we have my paladin. He's a holy paladin. So generally paladins need attack power, but he's using a lot of spell power. So this is why. So 1 second. Let's talk about base stats first. So base stats, they kind of vary on what class you play. So for example, for paladin, strength gives attack power and block value. There's a certain amount that it gives, but that doesn't really matter. You just need to know that for paladins, for warriors, for rogues, for shamans, for druids in bear form, I think that was it. For melee classes, strength gives attack power. And for classes that can equip shields, you also give block value. So it's also not bad for a tank class, right? Agility gives melee critical strike chance and armor. And for rogues, hunters, druids, shamans, it gives attack power. So generally, these leather-wearing classes, they like agility, while the plate and mail-wearing classes, they like strength. Stamina is good for every class and increase your health, but most of the time it's not your priority unless you're a tank or it is just abundant on a piece of gear. Intellect increases mana and spell critical strike chance. This is very good for casters. Spirit is a very interesting stat. Spirit increases your regeneration of health out of combat, which is mostly secondary unless you farm a ton of spirit on your gear. Then it might be worth it, but on normal levels it's not. And the big thing is the mana regeneration while not casting for 5 seconds. So if I would spend some mana here, as you say, my mana bar is up here, so I spend some mana, and right now I am only regenerating a little bit of mana because I have 6 mana regeneration while casting. But as you can see, now I've casted, it's really slow, and after 5 seconds it will go up rapidly. This is the Spirit 5-second rule. Spirit is really good for healers and all casters in solo leveling if you can abuse it. But if you have some more questions on that, you can ask on the stream, or I can of course make a video on abusing the 5-second rule. Armor, just reduce your physical damage. There are 4 armor classes. There is cloth, which is the weakest, then leather, then mail, and at level 40, paladins and warriors can wear plate, which is the highest armor value items in the game. Now, for melee, there is of course attack power, which is gained by strength and agility for some classes. There's hit rating, so hit rating increases the chance that you will hit the mob. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's really good for DPS and also for tanks, generally for all melee classes. Crit chance is also a pretty good stat, but some classes, like for example assassination rogues, really benefit from crit, or also holy palance, but not from melee crit. Expertise is almost the same thing as hit, but here it reduces the chance that you're getting dodged or parried. Now ranged has the same stats as melee, but just kind of different stats. I mean, like, melee attack power is not range attack power, but they are kind of the same thing. They do the same thing. Now, for spells, there is bonus spell power. Here it says damage and healing. That's still from WoW Vanilla, but in Wrath, there's only spell power. Now here on my chest, you can see down there, equip increase spell power by 15. Now, this is what you want to stack. Spell power is the best stat for any caster. So anyone that uses spells, magic abilities, they want spell power. And spell power is so strong. It increases the effects of your spells and heals and damage spells. And you want to stack that. As you can see, I try to get as much spell power, spell power, spell power, spell power. Here's also spell power. And on here, there you go. A ton of spell power. I'm stacking spell power because it's the best stat for any caster. While strength, attack power, hit, and crit rating are really good for melees. Now haste rating increases the speed you cast your spells. It's really self-explanatory, but it only appears after level 60 because it was added in the Burning Crusade. Defense stats, armor we already talked about. Defense rating, increase the chance you block, parry, and dodge. You will find this on specific gear, on specific items. Defense rating is really only used for tanks. These are the own stats for dodge, parry, and block. There are also items that increase these stats specifically, and also there's resistances up here. They can be on gear, or some specific buffs can give other players resistances. For example, here the Paladin auras. Right now I have 0 fire resist. If I turn on fire resistance aura, I have 30 fire resist, which reduces the damage I take from fire spells. Now, some notable things on items. So every item has a required level. You can see under the durability is required level 27, and it has an item level. Item level decides what quality the item is. So this is a rare headpiece, requires level 27, and item level is 32. I mostly wear rare items because I'm spamming dungeons with my friend. For example, here's a green item. There are also white items, which are the worst. They have no stats. Then there are epic items. I can show that on another character. They are the strongest items in the game mostly. There's some epics that are extremely good, some that are just fine, and you will rarely see them. But if you see them, it's a reason to scream. Let's quickly talk about weapons. Now, weapons, they can either be one-handed, main hand, offhand, or two-handed. Main hand can only be used in main hand, off can only be used in offhand. One-handed can be used in either main hand or offhand, and two-handed is used with two hands, so you can't equip an offhand. Offhands can be weapons, as I said. Just offhand items. I don't have one here at the moment, but they just have stats. 1 second. Offhand items just have stats. For example, this is an offhand item. It's held in offhand. So we call it an offhand item, and it just has stats. And then there's shields. Now shields have a lot of armor. If you equip a shield, you're super tanky. Like, if I unequip my shield right now, see, I have 960 armor and only 18% physical damage reduction. But if I equip it, I have 2.5 thousand and almost 40% damage reduction. The difference is insane. Also, once you equip a shield, you can block. Now the block chance is over here in your defensive rating. but there is a block rating on there as well. The block rating decides how much damage you block. So I will block 25 damage, but my strength increases the block value by 33, so I end up with 58 blocked damage. I think it's just quite important so you understand the stats and what they actually do, because I've seen many players that don't know what intellect does, they don't know what agility does. I heard there was a warlock needing on my agility strength ring when I was playing a warrior, because he thought it would give him critical strike, but it doesn't, it's only melee critical strike. So this is what you need to understand. If there are any more questions, I will make another full length video on stats if there is interest for it. Now this concludes my guide on how to become a better WoW leveler and how to actually enjoy the journey. So if there are any more questions, as I said, I would just suggest you go on my I would just suggest you go on my stream or ask a comment, and yeah, I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.